which hopefully this exploration today will inform. So here are some super common demotivators. We're going to go through them kind of one by one. As we do, I'd like you to think about, are any of these things happening at work? And then is there anything you can do about it? Some things are out of our control, as I said at the beginning, right? But it's good to at least be aware of them. And what can we control? What can we not? What levers are available for us to pull? Organizational politics. I'm going to ask you to just go ahead and participate in the chat here. Not saying currently, but have you experienced demotivation due to organizational politics in your career? You can just give me a Y for yes or an N for no. I'll put one too. Yeah, and so that can be a tough one, right? It can depend on where you sit in the structure and how your power is dispersed and distributed amongst your organization. Are you at the top and you can affect things? Or are you somewhere in the middle toward the bottom? But sounds like we've all experienced that one. Unclear expectations, where clearly the expectation is that you perform well, but what that actually looks like, because that's something you've experienced. Now, if I'm a manager, is this something I can affect? Could be, right? I mean, at least at the right. Sometimes depends on who's setting the expectations. If they're expectations I'm setting, or is it being set broadly for the organization? That could be a different story, right? But certainly something that could be something I could affect, depending on what it is. Unnecessary rules. Is this something that has demotivated you? Oh, that's a great, Krista, good input. The idea that the rules aren't really clear or don't seem to apply in all areas. Mm-hmm. So maybe we could even change that to unnecessary or unclear rules, or maybe even relate that, have some overlap between unclear expectations and unnecessary rules. No follow-up. Has this demotivated you? Yeah, that experience where I find that a culture of no follow-up can be very demotivating, right? Like, it starts to feel like the work doesn't matter, or contributions in certain areas don't matter. Right? I'm going to assume hypocrisy in any context is a yes, so we can just go over that one. But where we say one thing or don't do something and do something else. What about consistently receiving discouraging input? I haven't gotten an N for any of these yet. What about opacity? Yeah. So, Marcelo, for discouraging input, is that what you're asking? Yeah, I would just say, you know, constant negative feedback would be an easy one. Um, but I think that you could also even say more broadly, a culture of, maybe identifying everything that's wrong without trying to find solutions. I definitely worked with organizations where if you would ask them what was wrong, they had all kinds of stories to tell you, um, which gave me some insights into what were the work conversations like. And probably it was just a lot of negativity, right? So I think an easy one would be, negative feedback, or feedback that isn't really constructive or helpful, but also I think just input from the environment that is generally discouraging. It's always been this bad. We're never good at this. Things like that. Opacity, or no transparency, can that be discouraging for anybody? Yeah, and this one I do want to sit on for just a second, because I think that one, there can be organizational politics that play into this as well. Personally, I always find as a manager, it's best practice. Like in a perfect world, I would communicate everything to everybody all the time, right? Like our organization's financial health, where we're at, what we're worried about, what we're excited about. Um, any discussions of policy changes, or change in strategic direction, or a change in focus, like those types of things, when changes happen in an organization, help us understand and adapt better, much more easily than just, this is happening, deal with it. Marcelo, I know this resonated with your former colleague, a perception of unfairness. I'm just going to keep going through these now. Management invisibility, meaning that they don't have a strong presence in the organization. So there's a lot of value in having ownership, having self-direction, but management is really there to kind of guide, so that we're all really rowing in the same direction, in the long term. And so if there's no, you know, visible presence of management, I think you could probably also say management presence isn't always positive, but and then micromanaging, I think we're all familiar with. So why do we care? The thing I would point out, excuse me, for those of you who are managers, is that it's not always easy to identify what is demotivating a person. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that you might be the last to know. Um, so having those types of conversations with people can be super important. Oops. All right. So we're going to get to your assignment. I'm going to, in the chat, if you would, really quick, I'm sharing a link.